Hi, I'm Tessa, a veteran educator working in the field of special education.
And I'm Kim, mom of 2 autistic boys and a late diagnosed autistic person myself.
And welcome to Totally Over the Spectrum, where we dive into embracing autism through understanding and support. Welcome to episode 24. When do you share a diagnosis? And in this particular podcast, we're going to do when do you share a diagnosis as an adult? And what better question than to ask you that one?
Yeah, so I got my diagnosis at the age of 50, which is really late. So
Yeah.
it was a different process than, when I would tell people for my kids who were diagnosed early. Alex was diagnosed at 6 and Peter was diagnosed at 2. So yeah, it's how I would handle all of that is a little bit different. So I thought I would break this down into because you're going to tell people with different relationships to you in a different way. So I thought I'd break it down into family, friends, at work, and then just strangers or people in the community.
Okay, great. So as always, we both go and do our own research on the subject. We very rarely discuss what we're each going to say just because we can bring it an authentic, open discussion that's live and, not edited for our viewers to watch.
Yeah.
And as always, my research, kudos to the UK and Australia for always being my go-to places to look for evidence-based information. And of course, they've got at least 10 to 15 years head start on us for all of this information. So most of my information is going to be coming from there. I'd like to tell our listeners that because sometimes we've had questions saying, hey, where'd you get your information from? So just to let you know, that's where I get them from. And if there's anything that they like or need any information, please comment or send us a message. And we're always happy to help.
Yeah, and we really appreciate those of you who have liked videos and subscribe. It really helps us out, so thank you for that. Getting a diagnosis at 50, that is a very long time of having your family, because we'll talk about family first, see you and think of you in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Right? So when you get your diagnosis, for me, it was really, it was sort of liberating. It gave me an answer to questions I had been asking. And part of you wants to say, hey, let's share this. I found this piece of information, and this information makes everything in my entire life make sense now. Everything makes sense now. And I want to share that because I'm really excited about it. But not everyone is going to receive it well.
Yeah. And it's that validation that you'd been looking for, right? On to your authentic self, right? Is what I took from it when you told me. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Totally. Okay. Welcome aboard kind of thing.
Some people are going to need time to digest that information. Like, you have to think, usually as an autistic person, especially someone who's high masking and you've waited a long time to get this information, you've been struggling with this idea for a very long time. And you don't just go and get a diagnosis. You're usually like, well, maybe I might need to do some research into this to see if this actually applies to me. Right? So you spend a long time researching it and thinking about it and going, maybe, I don't know. And like, I can't diagnose myself. And you've spent a long time ruminating over this. And then for me, it took 2 years to actually get a diagnosis. So I was on a wait list for 2 years, which is another stretch of time. So in that 2 years, I selectively told people, hey, I'm thinking, like, I'm on the wait list now for a diagnosis. Like, I'm thinking that I might be, right? And it's very mixed reactions from people. So I sort of selectively told people I thought would be open to this idea. Mm-hmm. When I told my family members, they were pretty okay, right? For the most part. And I know that there are people out there whose family members are like absolutely against it. And for them, it seems to be like the general theme seems to be, well, that can't be true because I'm like that. You get it from me. And they don't want to deal with the fact that, yeah, there's a huge hereditary component, right? There's over 800 predisposition genes for autism. So chances are, yeah, it came from you. So, of course, and then they're going to meet resistance because they don't want to identify themselves in that way.
Yeah, they're going to have to take a look in the mirror kind of process.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't really make sense to me why they would feel that way unless they think that autism is this terrible thing.
Possibly. I think that's when I think it is important to sit down and have that heart-to-heart conversation with that person, just to have a true idea of where they're coming from, what they're feeling, and to also validate their emotions and process through this, right? So it's a give and take conversation, because you're, making yourself vulnerable by explaining and sharing your diagnosis. They're receiving this information, processing this information, having to analyze it and going, hey, the possibility is there. And then you've got to reciprocate that empathy as well.
So I feel like for my family, I was not going to withhold the information. I was going to tell them, and I would tell them at the beginning when I was looking, so that they would have 2 years before I actually got a diagnosis to process it themselves. And then I wasn't positive that it was going to come back. Yes, you are, right? Because I was still doubting it. That's part of it. Anyway, so if there were still family members after the fact that were not on board, as an adult, I can just say, well, that's okay. That's you. And I don't have to deal with unsupportive family members as an adult, right? Because I feel like an unsupportive family member is worse to have that in my life than to not have them at all. If someone can't be supportive, right? I'm just at that age where I'm like, either you're on board or you're not. And I don't have time for you're not. Right? So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I'd love to hear if anybody else sort of feels that way. Can leave us a comment on that one.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get down to, when do you share this information? To whom do you share this information? And the pros and cons of it.
All right. So for friends, sharing it with friends was actually a lot harder for me. Right?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that
All
was.
right.
As someone who is high masking, I've spent a long time hiding parts of myself to fit in. And as much as I feel like the friends that I have now would all be supportive, there was still a chance that they wouldn't be.
Okay.
And it's very difficult to make friends as an autistic person.
Yeah, I would agree. It's more so difficult because of the social norms and cues. And it's also very difficult making friends once you're at a certain age bracket, right? You're set in your ways and, so yeah, I can see where you're apprehensive in wanting to do that and share that information, and the pros and cons to that. So what are the pros and cons for you?
Well, I didn't want to lose the people that I care about.
Okay.
Notice how I was not so worried about that with family. But I mean, your friends to me I have a few friends and they're very close friends, right? I don't have a lot of friends. I feel like that would be exhausting. But those people who I am friends with are very important to me. So I was a little afraid to lose them. I was a little afraid that they wouldn't be okay with it, because you grow up believing that there's something wrong with you. Otherwise people would like you more.
Okay.
Right? So again, I sort of spread it out. So when I was going to go, when I was in that 2-year waiting period, I selectively told a couple friends. And even your reaction was like, what are we doing right now? But, you're very quickly like, you go away and you process things. You think about things, right? You don't just automatically dismiss or accept something, right? You're a thinker. So you thought about it really quickly and you came back to me and you're like, yeah, that makes total sense. Right. But it's a shock. It's a shock for everyone.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty good at hiding it from the most part.
And that's where, when I started to do my research, is I found that a lot of the information that being presented from articles that I've read from adults who were diagnosed and wanted to share is that their high level of masking really contributed to people not accepting that they were diagnosed, or have a diagnosis of autism. So, and that was the key. I would say that was the number one aspect.
Yeah. So when I was saying to people, hey, I think I'm going to go for an assessment. And, I had one friend go, I don't see it. And I'm like, thanks. I'm really good at hiding it. Right. But again, when I was going for my assessment, I wasn't sure that I had it yet. Right. Like I wasn't sure that was part of who I am. Right. I'm saying had it like it's a disease, but I don't mean it that way. It's just, I wasn't sure that I was going to get a positive diagnosis. So it gave people some time. And then there were people I didn't tell until I actually had the diagnosis. So I could say, yes, I'm autistic. And I had people say, well, we're all a little bit autistic.
Okay.
No, we're not all a little bit autistic. That's not a thing. It is so dismissive. And I know that this friend meant it as like they're trying to say, it doesn't matter. But what it really says is, well, I know it's a terrible thing, but we're all a little bit like that. Like it sounds, do you know what I mean? It's like a backhanded sort of pat on the back. I don't know.
Backhanded compliment.
Right?
To say,
yeah. It's like, well, we're all a little bit, so don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. I'm excited about it because it explains me. It explains me. It gives me a reason for things. It makes me feel like, I think I've said this in another one, and I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names. I can't remember who said this, but it means that I'm a zebra and not a strange horse trying to fit in with other horses.
Yep.
Right? So
Yep.
it was great for me. Like I didn't have any feelings of who am I now afterwards. I know some people do. They get this diagnosis and they're like, well, if I've been masking my whole life, who am I really? And I didn't have that. I'm like, no, I'm me. I'm just hiding all of those aspects of me. So I didn't have that conflict afterwards. I was like, this is great. This is the answer I've been waiting for. None of my friends were really negative, aside from that one, oh, we're all a little bit, none of them were negative. And that friend didn't mean it to be negative. That was just sort of a knee-jerk reaction, I think. And I have to remember, too, that they didn't have time to process it. That was just the immediate response.
Yeah.
Right? I had one friend say to me, the more I get to know you, the more sense your kids make. And to me, I loved that because it was like when you're going through this process, you have a lot of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? Like, am I just doing this because my kids, or like, is this real, or am I faking it, or like you have all of these. And honestly, people, if you are going through that much turmoil, wondering if you are autistic or not, you are. That's just you are. That's just you are. Right? I don't even know how to go about saying that. No neurotypical person is going to wonder that much. They're not going to flip-flop and go back and forth on it because they're not going to be doing the research.
They're not. Okay.
Right?
So go out there and look at getting a validation, if you so choose, for your own peace of mind, right? Which clearly that kind of liberated you. So
it did. And it allows you to be a little more gentle with yourself and say, I'm not stupid because I can't do this thing or because I don't understand this thing. This is how my brain works, and I'm just going to have to approach this differently. Mm-hmm. Right? Because when everybody else could do a thing like names, I can't remember names at all. I just can't remember names. They're gone. And I always felt so stupid because people are like, oh, hey, John, how you doing? I'm like, I worked with John for 4 years and I can't remember his name, and I can't do it. I'm just never going to be able to do it. I try to write names down. I remember names better when I see them written. So I love it when people have name tags. That's helpful.
Okay.
Right? But I just know that I can't do it. So I'm not going to beat myself up about it anymore. So when people say, hey, do you remember my name? Like, no, I suck at that game. Sorry. You're going to have to remind me. And usually people are okay with it.
And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that.
For me, I I would slowly tell people. I wouldn't just like tell people. I would slowly do it because I would need to space out those emotional reactions.
Okay. So I think we're consistency getting in when you're family or friends, weighing the pros and cons are going to be important, but more so when it comes to friends, because they are people you choose each other versus where with family, you're born into it, right? So kind of recapping on that. So, okay, I was going to jump into the next big factor but I'm not sure if I'm going to mess with your list.
I did see one person, I don't know if this is a thing or just this one person, and they had, you know how they have gender reveal parties?
Yep.
They had an autism diagnosis reveal party, and they had all their friends there, and they had people sort of voting whether they thought that, yes, it's a positive diagnosis, or no, it isn't. And I was watching this and I was thinking, wow, they have a lot of friends. That must be so exhausting to have all these people over. And I mean, some people are extroverted and they get a lot of pleasure out of having a lot of people around. So if you wanted to tell everybody all at once, you could have a diagnosis reveal party. I didn't know that was a thing.
I think all the research that I've done was the consensus was, take your time, weigh the pros and cons to each relationship, and and provide that, one step at a time. So I would be more apt to say to people, do that one person at a time, and then that way that gives you the opportunity and them the opportunity to digest that information and and then move forward in the relationship on a positive note. So
yeah, and I think overall I would say it's important to tell the people in your life who are important to you, because are you going to mask for your entire life?
Yep.
That's not healthy.
No, it isn't.
And you need support. So these are the people as friends that you're going to support each other. So if they can't support you with this, they might not be one of your people.
Okay. I think that's a good suggestion there. Keeping in that inner circle metaphor, the next big one was partners. You're dating, you're interested in this person, you're taking the relationship to the next level. When do you share that information?
That's a good question. I didn't have partners down, so I have to think about that just for a second. But I mean, to me, if you're already in a relationship, that's a no-brainer. You would tell them as soon as you started looking into it. Like, wouldn't you share that information with your partner?
Well, I would certainly do that, especially if, you go past the dating stage and things are starting to move forward. I think it's important for you to share that information. I don't think that it is fair to the other person for you to withhold that information.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to come out on a first date and say, hi, by the way. Like, I don't think that's, you're still getting to know each other, and being autistic is part of who you are. I don't think you need to sit down at the table and go, ta-da, like I don't think you need to
agree
do that.
with you. I'm talking about that, hey, we've gone on a few dates. We really like each other. We want to take it to that next level. I think before anybody becomes emotionally invested to that level, they need to know who your authentic you is.
And I think that's the point of dating. Point of dating is to actually get to know the other person. And I agree. I think that is part of who you are. That is part of what you share.
Okay. So we're both in consensus that is an area in which you really need to share that information. You should never withhold that information from your partner.
No, I agree with that. But I don't think I would sit down at the table, shake hands, say, hi, nice to meet you, by the way.
Yeah, no. Working through the social norms and cues, you follow.
But I mean, if it was to come up in conversation on your first date, I might still say, well, this is an opportunity and I feel like it needs to be shared. Or if you suddenly get overwhelmed or something on your first date, I'd say, well, hey, this is the way it is.
Yep.
Right? So I don't think it's something to be ashamed of.
No, not at all. This is who you are.
Exactly.
And people need to love you for who you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was in my realm of, that inner circle of family, friends, and partners.
Yeah, I missed partners. I didn't have that.
Okay, what's on your next?
Workplace.
Yes, that was in my. Yeah,
This one I think is really tricky. So
I agree.
I
with
would
you.
not put this on a resume. Autistic people are underemployed or unemployed to really high degree.
Yes.
Right? And there's a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of prejudice out there. There's a lot of lack of understanding. So no, I'm not going to put it on a resume unless you're applying for a diversity, equity, inclusion checkbox and it's going to get you the job. Sure. Check it off. Right? Like you are selling yourself to get a job. That is the way life is.
I agree with you. That was, it is unfortunate, even though there's a lot of laws that are put into place in order to supposedly protect people with disabilities and give them equal opportunity, it does not translate into real life, unfortunately. I'm not going to, mince my words about it and, be polite. It is the fact of life, right? So for people who are out there that are listening to our podcast or watching our YouTube, that is the reality. And I too would advise saying, no, you do not share that diagnosis right up until your, probation period is over and done with.
That's exactly what I had written down. Now, I was on a webinar and there was a lawyer and somebody else, names people, it's hard to remember, but they were talking about employment opportunities for autistic people. And I was on there knowing that my son Alex is going to go out into the workforce fairly soon. So I was on there trying to get some tips and all of that kind of thing because I just didn't know. And they were saying, there's no reason not to put it on your resume. Like, there's no reason not to talk about it. Like, they have to accommodate you. And every single parent on there and autistic person on there looking to get employment said, they won't hire me. Like, they won't hire me. So these people giving this webinar who are supposed to be, I don't know, experts, like information givers, are wrong. They're wrong. Your employer has to give you accommodations. They don't have to hire you.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And they don't want to have to give you accommodations. That is more work for them. Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they hire someone that they don't need to give accommodations to?
Yeah.
That's easier.
I would say in the reality, there are very few exceptionally amazing human beings that are employers that would openly and willingly accept a person with autism into their, employment.
Depends what the job is, right?
Yeah. So that percentage is so small that the likeliness of being blessed with an employer like that is few and far between.
Exactly. So mask away, get your job, go through the probation period. I understand that that's going to be difficult. That's going to be traumatic. That's going to be really hard. And some people can't keep up with the demand.
Yeah. That is when you go out and you get your support network working for you, with your therapist, with your family, with your friends to help you, get this position, manage it, maintain it to when you are when you have the opportunity to be able to openly discuss that with your employer or HR for the accommodations that you need.
That's exactly what I have.
Right up until then,
Yep.
please, do your best and bring out your best masking skills. And
it's sad. And I understand what we're saying sounds horrific. And you're probably thinking, well, I shouldn't have to do that. Well, that is reality.
Yeah. And the reason we're talking about this is to give you the best opportunity in order to secure employment. And
yeah. And now to maintain that employment, obviously you're not going to be able to mask indefinitely in your job. But once you are past your probation period, in Canada at least, they can't simply just fire you.
Yes.
So they need to have sort of just cause or all of that kind of thing. So then you can say, I need some accommodations. And those accommodations, we talk about accommodations in episode 15, so I'll put a link to that because we won't go into all of them here. But basically, they have to provide you with accommodations without putting undue burden onto themselves.
Yes. So it's a give and take relationship. And, you've got to be reasonable with those accommodations in order for you to be able to do your job, but also not, as you said, burden the employer.
Yeah. And if they refuse accommodations or they terminate you because you've asked for accommodations, that is a human rights issue. You can go after them for that. I understand that that might be too stressful or not worth it. Yeah, every situation is going to be different.
Yeah. Okay. So those were my, top aspects in which when you as an adult should, provide disclosure in regards to your diagnosis. One other area that I had was if you're an adult returning to education or further education.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So I think that is also an area which you need, once you're, accepted into a program, I think you need to reach out and just say, hey, I have an official diagnosis. Because the challenges that you're going to face returning to education as an adult is, it's big in itself. And you're not going to be up to date on the new practices and procedures that are in place by the colleges and universities. So I would suggest that you go out and you get the accommodations that need for you to succeed in this program or obtaining your degree or whatever it is.
I don't see a downside in school.
I don't see a downside either.
Like that doesn't have to follow you. You do a co-op position. You don't need to tell them.
No.
The school can't divulge the information.
No.
It's just getting the accommodations that you need during school time. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah. And the one that links the two, I think, is coworkers and peers that you're going to be working with, whether they're as an adult in school or as, an adult in a workplace. Weigh the pros and the cons really, really carefully when sharing your diagnosis with coworkers and or with peers that you're going to be in school with for however length of time.
Yeah, I mean, your peers in school are going to be the people in the workplace with you.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, you need to be a little careful there. And coworkers in the workplace, if you're not past your probation period, I wouldn't say anything.
No, I wouldn't either.
Right? And it's no one's business. Like you don't have to tell anybody you don't want to. But I think that if you need accommodations, if you need support, you're very quickly going to know if this person is a person who is going to willingly provide support or not.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. So is there anything else on your list?
Strangers out in the community, like just random people.
Okay. Yeah, I just had that as other people. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I rarely tell people I don't know. Obviously, podcast now, I tell everybody I don't know. But if I am out in the community, if I'm grocery shopping or something, I don't generally disclose the information, right? Like, how would that even be a thing? But what I would do is I would assess if there was an opportunity for a good reason. Like if I saw a situation or as part of a situation where it's an opportunity to educate someone, I might divulge that information in an opportunity to educate or help someone understand or change the perspective.
Okay.
Right? And that happens more because I have kids. So when my youngest son, Peter, is non-speaking, and sometimes this becomes very apparent in the community and people will talk to me about it. And if I can change their perspective by saying, yeah, me too, I might do that just so they don't think, oh, yeah, it's a boy, right? Women too, right? It's not just for boys. Mm-hmm. We can do it too. Mm-hmm. But I might do that.
Okay.
But it depends if I feel like that person is open.
Okay.
If I feel like they're just not going to be open to any kind of new information, then why would I bother?
Okay. Under the category of others, I had, say you're out in the community and enjoying an event and you happen to take a fall or hurt yourself, and you've got medical assistants helping you or, a first aider helping you or whatever. And, your anxiety level increases, and you're not able to mask as efficiently as you normally would, because now you've got all of these external factors that are you know taking your attention. I think that would be an opportunity or a sound reason for you to share that information with somebody else and just say, hey, I may not understand or I may not appreciate everything that is happening over here, but I just want to let you know, this is who I am, this is what I am. And people might take a different approach when explaining information to you. And that would be one of the situations I would recommend that you would share that.
Yeah, I think my basic rule for any of these situations is that when it's going to get you help or the support that you need, then I think it is worthwhile. Or if it's an opportunity to help educate, then
Yeah.
I think it's worthwhile. I think that's sort of the
Baseline.
You're going to run into so many situations and they're all going to be different. There's so many different variables. Like, you kind of have to weigh the things in the moment. But as a general rule, I'd say help, support, educate. Those are my three.
Yeah. And now our conversations have pretty much been our back and forth, when, why, what, relate to more level ones, right? So you're high functioning. We haven't really gone into, disclosing information on your diagnosis for level 2 or level 3, because that's a whole different ballgame altogether. And that becomes a lot of times very evident, right? So people, you don't often have to fill in the blanks for people, right? It's very obvious.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, usually, often, we'll say, level 3 also has a comorbidity of having an intellectual disability. And it's very apparent
Yes.
that this person needs extra support. So, yeah, you don't usually have to discuss it.
Yeah. So that's why we chose to stick with our level ones, just because, there's so many gray areas in which we needed to cover and bring forth the pros and the cons for everything.
Yeah.
Okay. In our next episode, we're going to discuss teenagers now. That's a hot subject because you're going to bring hormones and emotions into it. So stay tuned for our next episode.
We'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in. If you know someone who might find this episode helpful, feel free to share. Also, check out our website and socials linked in the description.